with famous people. How and do other people grow? Important topic. Certainly. I'm still just reeling from reading this shit, this garbage from Corey. Like my adrenaline's all pumping. Very, very frustrating. He is just absolutely determined to invalidate me. Like one of the things he said in the thing is he watched some video of mine sometime back in which I was critiquing Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris, but he said my arguments were very like shallow or not or whatever. The thing is, he doesn't even know what an argument is. He doesn't have any idea how he could possibly critique that shit. It's like, I don't need to have very deep arguments to critique Jordan Peterson. I just need to point out examples of his pure idiocy, right? I'm not trying to condemn the man. I'm simply saying he ought not to be afforded some sort of status as a good thinker predicated on these myriad examples of bad thinking, right? It's like, that's just how it goes in the world. Sam Harris, I have respect for Sam Harris. He's just, he's not as smart as me. What it boils down to. We're not as correct. Corey's obsessed with people rather than arguments. And I get that. He's not me. But his inability to understand there is an alternative approach to determining statuses for things than to evaluate the person is very triggery for me, I cannot believe this shit. Like, on the one hand, why do I care? I encounter idiots making idiotic dismissals of my carefully parsed shit all the time, right? But it bugs the shit out of me when I encounter from Corey. How and whether people grow. So one of the challenges between me and Corey is that I've been growing consistently a little bit, but a lot sometimes since I left Kimberly. Because I got out of a BPD relationship. If you're in a negative relationship, like a toxic relationship, obviously that's going to eat up all of your self-potentiality, just trying to keep yourself afloat, trying to make yourself feel okay, Once you get out of a toxic relationship like that, then you have the possibility to actually grow as a human being. But I'm of the mindset that growth is dependent mostly on the absence of things preventing it rather than anything in particular you're doing to attain it. So in the absence of things preventing my growth, various kinds of assault from the world, whether it be, like people being difficult, whether it be financial difficulties causing you to have to stress out about that, whatever. If you're free from various assorted life stresses beyond a certain point, it's like obviously everybody's got some stresses, but if you're basically feel safe and not not called upon by the world to do more or things other than what you can do, then most people will grow in such a circumstance or environment into a more actualized, more realized person, you know? So I've been growing because I have a loving partner who affirms me, because I have the capacity to be have this space, mental and physical and time and space to reflect and to not be consumed with putting out fires all the time, you know? When somebody doesn't grow, of course, they are going to presume you also are not growing if they think about it at all. Um, and probably, as is in the instance with Corey, if you feel like your legitimacy as an individual, your worth as an individual is being attacked on all sides, then, especially if you're not like fluent in your subjectivities, then you're probably going to try to make your reality other people's reality too, you know? So there's absolutely no reason for him to question the legitimacy or value of what I'm doing. Certainly no reason to question the accuracy of my critiques of various people's arguments. I'm indisputably among the world's foremost experts in the matter. But he's become accustomed to that. That's what you do to people you love, I guess, right? You know, is try to take them down a notch so they're not too full of themselves. I'm not full of myself. I'm appropriately confident where I should be confident. I'm appropriately self deprecating where I should be self deprecating. And I feel shame and guilt where I should. I don't feel much pride, even though I probably should, you know? I'm my own harshest critic, but I'm also committed above that to being objective about things and not engaging in false modesties or qualifications where none are needed. Sure, I perceive myself as more intellectually robust than people who were a lot more famous than me for being intellectually robust, like Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris or whoever else. I perceive myself that way for very good reasons. You know? Anybody is going to be extremely hard pressed to articulate instances of my idiotic explanation equivalent to the instances of Jordan Peterson's idiotic explanations that I articulate and negate, because I know what I'm doing. Obviously, other people don't know what they're doing, and that's fine. I don't care that they don't know what they're doing, but just know that you don't know what you're doing. And it's like, I don't attempt to critique the water company on the electrical diagrams they have up there. Why? Because I don't know anything about that. Why would I assume that my intuition about this electrical diagram is going to be informative to these people who are actually electricians? Elaine says, hi, Eric, negative relationships can make you grow to protect yourself. I don't think so. I do not. I mean, you may find after you're out of one that growth has occurred because of it. Um, but really, what's occurred because of it is learning, which is a little different than growth. So after I got out of the relationship with Kimberly, I knew what I was not going to put up with in a relationship again. In that sense, I grew in that I had more ability to protect myself in the future. But as long as you're in that negative relationship, all of your energy will be directed towards protecting yourself, not towards growth. Because if you're in a toxic relationship, what that means is one person is essentially entirely at fault for the whole thing, and the other person is essentially blameless. Now, because the one person who's at fault is is executing a toxic protocol against you, you may end up acting out and behaving in bad ways too. And that is deceptive because it makes it seem like it's both your faults, but it's not. So, no, being subjected to abuse is never a way to grow. It we grow when we recognize that abuse is never okay, you know. Now I'm not saying Corey's abusing me. I'm saying Corey's acting like his wife does to him. Liz feels the need to never let Corey feel good about anything he's done. He's always failing in some way or another, and she's always trying to explain that to him. So he feels that at this point he's just sort of been habituated to that's how people who care about each other express their caring for the other person, is that they criticize them and tell them what's wrong with them or whatever. Of course, criticism kills love. Now, you may say, Eric, I can hardly think of anybody who's more critical than you. Yes, I'm extremely critical of wrongness in the world, not of people in my life. Big difference. Rachel has positions on things, belief systems, whatever, that I might think are malarkey. You will never hear me criticizing her about them or trying to correct her or whatever. She has her way of doing things, and I love her. I want her to do things her way and be happy, you know? And I recognize that even though intuition it uses some squirrely tools sometimes to get where it's going to, that for lots of things, we need to have a holistic, intuitive understanding, not a reducible, explainable understanding. Rachel has equivalent respect for me. So our respective expressions of intuition are complementary. What's happening with Corey, in terms of my response to it, is that he is not validating on my fifth slot NI. In other words, he's not telling the truth about me. He's just he's just Jeff Shawing me, basically. So, of course, if you want to offer a legitimate critique of anything I've said, you have to quote what I've said, or at least paraphrase it, and explain what's wrong with it. Critiques of me, they're very long blocks of text that express no specific arguments that I've made, but merely refer to arguments that were made as inadequate without saying what they were or responding to them or explaining why they were inadequate. That is just, you are really, really, really trying to piss me off. Because I'm not claiming to be great at everything in the world. And I'm not claiming that you evaluate the correctness of what I'm saying based on my greatness at all. I'm saying that if you are capable of parsing it on its own merits, understanding it, and we're going to define understanding as if you understand something, you have the ability to explain back to you what was just explained to you. You know, but if you're intuiting without understanding about something that explains, then you are doomed to fail forever. So, it's been kind of a topsy-turvy morning, kind of an emotionally charged morning as well. On the way back from town, I pulled over on the side of the road to take a picture of this little house thing, this little like old looking shack thing. And I pulled over on the side of the road and get out of the car, got my camera there, I'm looking at this thing. I hear, hey, stop that. I turn, I see a guy over there. Are you talking to me? I said, what are you doing? I'm taking a picture. Of what? This building? I don't believe I'm on your property, am I? And he didn't say anything else. But it's like, who the fuck do you think you are? I'm pulled over on the side of the road. I'm not on your property. And you open with, hey, stop that. Hey, fuck you. I mean, obviously I won the exchange because I did not stop what I was doing. I did take the short that I wanted to take. And he was silent after I pointed out that I was not on his fucking property. So, that was another little bit of adrenaline-y thing going on there. I called David the realtor this morning, informed him of our plans to sell this place, etc. Then I also got some kind of useful information on the way home. I stopped by an estate sale, and I asked them, like, "Are you selling this place?" They said, "No, it's a rental." I said, "Oh, how much? How much do you get for it?" They get $2,000 a month for it, and it's actually 4 bedrooms, but it's kind of like it's got a great view, but it's also got a lot of neighbors around it, and they kind of got old cars and stuff in their yards and stuff. So it's good to know that they get $2,000 a month for that. We can figure that's best standard. I think we could get $2,000 for a 3-bedroom, 1 bath in a better spot. You looked SS. I looked SS? I don't know what looking SS is. So whether or not people grow, what makes people grow? Is it really things they do? Well, it's conceivable that a person with good TESE, with good relationships with TESE, one or the other or both, will be able to change their circumstances enough that their circumstances are conducive to growth. But if a person is that good at changing their circumstances, then even once their circumstances are conducive to growth, they're likely to have a limited capacity for it because they're so concrete in their frames. People grow in different ways, also depending on whether they are, let's talk about 2 populations of people. Populations of people who have not been subject to any childhood abuse, more or less, have been raised by loving parents, more or less, right? And then people who are victims of childhood abuse who thereby become toxic adults, right? So let's set those people aside for a second, the toxic people. And let's talk about regular people. So regular people are likely to emerge from their schooling years um, with a lot of either having clarity and a plan about what they're going to do, in which case they likely have little clarity or plan about how to determine what they ought to do, what matters, big picture stuff, right? Or they emerge from their schooling years confused, unsure, like, prepared to deal with life as a sensor who's got very practical outcomes in mind and willing to put in the hours to make the money to get those outcomes, etc. The world assumes our childhoods train us to be that, but many of us are not that. And so, we enter into our 20s and such, and we maybe know how we have fun. We maybe know where we get our sort of self-esteem from, what things we consider ourselves good at, etc. Um, but almost none of us have any real grasp of the gap between the expectations that have been imprinted upon us and the realities of being a choice-making agent and and building a life that you're comfortable with. Money says, okay, well, oh, I look suspicious. Well, he just said, "What? Hey, stop that." um, there's a flaw in modern times where s folks are suspicious. Money says, I thought about the term self growth for a while, and I think it requires a meta ethic of what you subjectively want, and the growth aspect is reduced to developing tools to attain those. But not all forward progress is good and positive. But I mean, sure, not all change is progress, you could say, right? Some change is regression or um, something like deviance from a given course, mission creep, etc. Uh, I do plan to make. Maybe I'll address it in this live stream, but I plan on making a separate video in which I address the comments on um, on the 2 videos ago, where I basically asked at the end of it, please share comments, and I got good comments. I'd like to make a video about that specifically. Make you a video on the channel on which I write this message now. Left an email to the link to it. I think it's topical. Well, I'll tell you what, Isaiah Rude. Just put the link here. Now you can. The thing about self-growth is the reason I understand that it's an actual thing is I can tell that I'm a better person now than I used to be in various ways, not just from my own perspective, but I'm creating less wreckage in the world, doing less damage, hurting fewer feelings, ruffling fewer feathers. You might say, well, that's not inherently good or bad. Well, it's true that you need a frame for self-growth that, for me, begins with um, identifying suboptimal behaviors and or learning from experiences where I'm not proud of myself after the fact, I went into town to buy a bowl for this bone. Mariposa smoke shops is the one thing that is incredibly shady about Mariposa. Are two smoke shops. They don't have these size bowls. I knew I had one of these somewhere in the garage. I didn't look for it, but I just happened to see it when I went in the garage after I got back having purchased. So they didn't have these, one of these, which I'm not sure is going to fit or not, but I thought maybe it would. But then I fortunately found this. So Monty says, I've also listened carefully to how others use the term self growth, and it sounds like another way of saying conform to my own gaze. Well, I think the way most people tend to use the word self growth is, can you tell me what to do? Can you tell me how to be? It's like, that's what people who go to like C.S. Joseph for self growth get, or Dave's superpowers or whatever. That's what's going on there. They're saying they're searching for uh, a single NI thing that will liberate them from the parts of themselves that they feel are holding them back or they don't like. Real self growth, of course, is not something that you attain by executing a plan. It's not a goal. It's a person changes over time. Their personality type doesn't, but a person changes over time. Their expression of that changes over time. And they either become more optimized because the world is structured for them such that it feedback from the world naturally shapes them to better manifestations of their strengths and less harmful manifestations of their deficits. Well, Isaiah, the thing is, I would guess that you have, you will continue to have forever less need to grow than me because you started off early adulthood with way more broad exposure to people in the world than I did, thanks to the World Wide Web, WWW Internet. It's like I didn't even know about MBTI until my 30s. I didn't even know about cognitive functions until my 40s. And that's not something I lament, but it's a reality that it makes sense why I had a lot of anger, because I had no answers. I had no explanations. I was isolated in my geographical community among a bunch of regular people, namely mostly sensors, and even my fellow intuitives, well, they weren't NTPs, so I felt like an alien, but I didn't really know that very well because I'm so distant from my own feelings. I just knew there was something wrong with me, certainly something different about me. And I didn't have any good answers as to what was going on with who I was and why I was so weird or, until I encountered MBTI. And even then, it wasn't an explanation. I was just like, okay, well, I'm obviously this personality type. It's good to know the diagnosis of what's wrong with me. I have a disorder called ENTP, but it didn't offer me anything to do anything with besides just type descriptions. I had never heard of cognitive functions before. They weren't on the internet back then when I first encountered MBTI. or I didn't look hard enough for them. So I just set that aside for 10 years, you know? I thought it was interesting. I thought, oh, that helps a little bit. I get it. These other people aren't this type. That's why they're so different. But that doesn't help much, you know? Cognitive functions help a lot. Cognitive functions cognitive functions have been the Rosetta Stone for existence for me. It may not play out that way for everybody, but I feel like I can successfully understand, address, or crystallize the areas of uncertainty or dispute about any given matter at all, pretty much. That's about psychology, philosophy, people's disputes, communications, why the world is the way it is, etc. Before I understood cognitive functions, I had the same kind of mishmash of unsettling, inadequate answers that everybody else did. That's why I started the channel, was because I was just archiving a bunch of notes on a philosophy book I was thinking about writing, trying to answer questions I still hadn't been able to answer in my 40 years of thinking about them. Now I can answer them. It's crazy to even think about that, right? It's like trying to remember life before microwaves. So Money says, well, let me scroll up. I think I missed a couple things here. Does growth or decisions to engage in self growth always come out of negative realizations like hating your life trajectory, etc.? They're not fancy, Chris. I found them laying somewhere, so they're free. They're decent, though. No, I don't think growth comes out of negative realizations necessarily. I think that's learning, really. Growth happens when you are not subject to a lot of antagonism, you know. If you think about a plant grows best when it has just the right amount of water, sun, just the right amount of kind of soil, etc. In other words, when there's nothing stressing it. Now, sure, some minor stresses are kind of necessary to keep something vigorous, but that's the problem for almost nobody is too few stresses. You know, growth happens best when you're not being attacked, when you're being celebrated for who you are, and um, and when it's safe for you to fail in areas that you're not good at. An actualized person is comfortable and confident in their strengths and knows where those strengths can be well applied and where they can be poorly applied. They're accepting of their deficits, somewhat self-deprecating about them perhaps, but not trying to utilize their awareness of that to, you know, shirk responsibility or something. And most of all, they are increasingly nuanced in dealing with other people's contradictory frames. So, in other words, I'm bipolar. Growth for me means showing increasing respect and awareness of how my actions and words affect other people's feelings. When you understand how your deficits negatively impact other people and naturally express those deficits in less harmful ways, that's growth. How would you discern between different types of growth, namely subject changing their internal state or the improved feedback from the environment? I mean, I think essentially almost everybody is carrying around a burden of 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 limiters, you know, like almost everyone is much more acutely aware of how their deficits make them inadequate for the world than they are of how their strengths make them adequate for the world. Oh, this is maximally so with people who are most meaning focused intuitives. So, for most intuitives, it's going to be the case that um, that there's going to have to be the two will go sort of in hand. Like as a person is, let's say you quit a terrible job that was you hated getting up every day and going to, or you get fired from it or something. Um, you may have growth on the grounds of recognizing from that experience that you need to prioritize your subjective preferences more in making life decisions in the future. Or you may reevaluate your subjective priorities. Maybe I don't need to make that much money after all. Maybe I'm being too indulgent in my purchasing or whatever. But the thing is, in that instance, you've got external circumstance changing your personal circumstances dramatically all of a sudden. And then you've got meaning making or understanding that occurs in that state change period where the world's all of a sudden changed, but you're not used to it yet. You still have all of your existing frames of reference. Maybe you wake up 5 a.m. the next morning to go to work because that's what you're accustomed to, but you remember, I don't have work today. So it's like in the aftermath of difficult stretches, you will probably reflect on those difficulties and try to avoid them in the future. But one thing that I don't believe is very possible for many people, including myself, is to change your mood willfully. So it's like if my problem is I'm not feeling it, then I can't address that directly, right? I gotta try to address it in some other fashion. The problem with self-growth stuff in general, it tends to be focused on people's attitudes and or actions that that their supposed attitude is preventing them from taking, without recognizing that attitude follows from reality, not the other way around. If things are shitty, I'm going to have a shitty attitude. If things are great, I'll much less likely to have a shitty attitude. No offense and not to pry, I'm not that guy, but I was watching your older videos from 2016 and before, etc. You looked messed up on drugs or drunk or something. You look different then, kind of. I mean, I haven't changed my consumption habits at all since then. Uh, 2016 was, what, 7 years ago? I mean, that was in a time period when I was living in the Temple City house by myself. Delilah was with her stepmom, and I was, you could say I was hitting the Adderall probably harder than I do now, and I was fairly thwacked. But I think what you're talking about ultimately is when you watch those videos, you're seeing somebody sitting in, I don't know, what is this place? A filthy basement or something? It was my garage. You're just seeing somebody who's living like kind of trashy, you know? The house is trashy. Um, and and I mean, I'm still not really caring a lot about my appearance, but I probably cared even less about it then, you know. I don't know. My teeth are worse now. But there were a lot of heuristics that one would use to dismiss me more readily in those older videos. It's unfortunate, but it makes a difference whether you are dressed nice, groomed well, if you live in a nice house, if you drive a nice car. Those things make a difference for people. What I was saying 7 years ago wasn't as correct as it is now. And I was not nearly as grown as I am now. So, I was still in a period of my life where things hadn't gotten figured out. I had my debate business. I didn't really know how to be a businessman. I was still wooking panub. And it would be quite some time till I found Rachel. So it was a more wild time for me, obviously. And I was also much more in combat mode all the time. Being actively coaching debate automatically puts you in more combat mode than normal because you're going to war every other week and tournaments and stuff. But additionally, being in LA, dealing with LA shit all the time, I mean, I was a lot more ready to fight, at any instant, all the time in LA. There's a lot of ways in which I was not as well. I didn't have the faith that I have in myself now, which means that the things I was saying were more full of bombast and being stated from a more insecure place. So, ironically or counterintuitively or whatever you want to say, they probably came across as even more bold in their claim making, less qualified, etc. This has probably almost always been the case at any given moment in my life. It's been a pretty straight line like this. I am wiser, more correct, and more understanding of the world now than I have ever been before. If you look at old videos, you will see a man who obviously did not understand some of the things that he understands now. But you're not looking at a man from those old videos who's on any other drugs than he's on now. It's not exactly the same drugs. Smoking weed, doing speed, occasionally, maybe mushrooms. But although I didn't really do that back then. Just Adderall, you know. I'm taking up Adderall, I start getting a little weird. Is attitude related to FI? Sure, attitude is definitely related to FI. If people around you are messed up and you don't fit in, you may start thinking something is wrong with you, even though you may be healthier than them, but in that environment, you're the outcast. Here I am. Exactly. Exactly. If you're in some kind of environment where you got to walk on eggshells, you learn what kinds of things you have to walk on eggshells about, and you internalize that it's because those things are bad that you're doing. Almost everybody's subject to that, including even me. And I was about as insulated from gaslighting as could conceivably be possible when I was in a relationship with Kimberly. I have my own incredibly robust objective calculation that always trusts my own deliberation processes over heuristics, which is very good for checking shit, you know. In other words, it's an anti-gaslighting mechanism. But more importantly, really, I had the YouTube channel so that I could put in front of other people to get their opinion on, is this cool what she's doing to me? You know. And yet, even so, she definitely had me internalizing assorted negative narratives about myself by the end of that relationship. And I was only in it for 2.5 years compared to, say, Corey, who's been in it for decades. Attitude is definitely related to FI, and to somewhat that's related to brain chemistry. Like, obviously, I have a more upbeat, happier attitude when I have more dopamine in my brain. So, like when I run out of Adderall, then there's this few days where I tend to feel negative feelings. I just remind myself it's just Adderall crash. Doesn't mean anything. But it's certainly the case that I'm not going to choose those days to enjoyably get my chores done. You know, it's just not going to play out that way. And telling me to change my attitude, well, that's just not going to work. I don't know how to change my attitude. I'm feeling tired and cranky and hungry right now. Well, change my attitude. Why don't you change your instructions? ISFPs are like the most intuitive type if you use intuitive and non-MBTI terms. I mean, well, in some sense, you're right, Carlos Pay, but because the polar extroverted intuition means the only intuition you ever see from an ISFP really is NI. So in that sense, that they're very quiet and then they say the one NI thing, that makes them appear to be the most intuitive type, maybe, but as you qualified, using it in non-MBTI terms. That's why I think it's important to have a broader perspective of the world instead of thinking that is everyone's reality. Fairpoint says, Elaine, I guess I was just blessed with accepting community around me. I was blessed with that too, in my home, right? Like, my parents loved me, and my mom at least celebrated me for who I was a lot. Sure, my dad, I got a lot of these kind of like, oh, what is wrong with this guy? Can't he figure out an interior shadow? His house is terrible. Yeah, he didn't say those things, but I got that. He was a good father. He didn't say negative things to me like that. But I'm too intuitive not to understand what was going on, Regardless, you don't need to have a perfect environment. You just need to have parents who genuinely love you and don't abuse you. In the actual world, in my childhood, I did not experience nearly so fair, just, and righteous an environment as I did at home. It was the 70s/80s. There was no supervision of children. And um, I and probably every single other one of my peers experienced varying degrees and varying in various instances of injustice throughout childhood. But it's fine. Everybody can get over some of that stuff, provided they have parents who love them and a home environment that's safe. They can get over some of it, you know. You saw some of my old videos about dating. Whenever anybody says to me, "I saw one of your old videos recently," I go, "Oh God." I think for a second, maybe I should just go back and get rid of some of those horrible old videos. And I realize you're never gonna do that, Eric. Just sit here and take the beating. Go ahead, beat me up. Oh, you loved it. I didn't read that part. There was one presentation about all the steps to build a relationship. Love it. Huh. Are you certain about your plan to sell the house? No, I'm 100% certain. Um, it was in sort of intuition stages until we learned just like 2 days ago when we walked up to the street to see what these strange people with green safety vests were doing on the hill across the street. And they told us they own the hill. They are going to build a house there, looking down on our house, and they're going to be taking bids from contractors in the spring. And I don't think it was more than 1 hour after we learned that I said, "Okay, we need to sell this house." No, I don't still use Whereby. In fact, I need to cancel that. Uh, it's on auto pay, but I think that should be solved now by the fact that my card, I had to get a replacement card, so the old card, is not working. So yeah, once we learned that construction was going to occur, Deathboy Klaus, it ceased to be something we would probably do. Oh, I want to watch this. This looks interesting. ENTPs for Eric Strauss. It's just for me. I'm going to share this on my community tab, Isaiah. That way I'll be able to access it later when I want to watch it after I'm done streaming. Video. How nice of you. What a sweet gesture. I wish my friend Corey were as nice as you are. You know, he's kind of a duck. Hey, a video just for me. That's what I put as the caption thing for the video link. So I will watch that later. I'll be able to find it. Easy. No problem. I just go to the community tab. See? See how that works? All right, now, let's see here. There's some way I could talk to you. I'd like to catch up with you. I'm going through a difficult time. I'd appreciate some advice. Yeah, sure. I don't plan to live stream a super long time. We could talk right after we live stream. In fact, I'll tell you what. It's 12 p.m. now. Why don't I send you a calendar link for 1 p.m. That puts a ticking clock on this stream. It gives me enough time to make it. I hate trying to spell your name. Spelling your name is gay. What's your email address. There it is. I got it. You have too many vowels in your name. Can't you tell that? Can't you see? That's your problem, Isaiah. You got too many vowels in your name. Is that a good time for you? It's an hour from now. An hour from now. Yeah. Isaiah Reed and I are going to have a date. Corey and I'm not sure. Well, with all the bullshit he sounds like. Of course, it makes me mad. It makes me more mad than when some random person does it. Because it's like he keeps trying to fix some kind of holistic problem or deny me legitimacy in what I'm doing. But, you know, if he wants to get through to me, negating something that I'm saying, he needs to explain exactly why what I'm saying is wrong. To do that, he needs to understand what I'm saying, first of all, which will require him to listen to me. What did Corey actually say? You want me to read it to you? Sure. I can't read it to you because it's on the phone. And it's on Signal. So every time I go leave this app to do something else on the phone, this disconnects and doesn't reconnect until I come back to this app. So no, I can't actually read it to you. But the gist of it was that I have an inflated sense of my own intellect, as demonstrated by my critiques of Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, which weren't really full, which just had shallow, weak arguments in them. He doesn't specify any of my shallow, weak arguments. He consistently seems to think I need to go learn from other intellectuals first before I can say things or whatever. He doesn't get the fact that, and doesn't want me to be an outlier of any significance in any way, The point is, I don't, as I've tried to explain to many people, but probably not to him, the reason I'm such an outlier in terms of correctness has only a certain amount to do with intelligence or smartness. There are plenty of people in the world who are a lot smarter than me, who nevertheless are going to lose every argument with me. And it's not because I'm a great debater. It's because I understand all the various components necessary to be understood to have the expertise needed to be right. But, he sees me as presumably having some kind of inflated ego about my own intellect, and he needs to take me down a notch. Of course, my point continues to be, why are we talking about me? If you want to critique something I'm saying, quote the thing I'm saying and critique it on its merits. Don't reference a video you watched in which I critiqued these other guys, say my arguments are weak or thin or inadequate in some fashion, without specifying what those arguments are or why they're weak thin, right? Regardless, it's a double bind. If I do an NI popping video that conveys in short order something wrong with another thinker, it's inadequately deep in its exploration of the topic. If I do something that's a thorough dismantling of it, it's an example of me being caught up too much in my own belief that I know what I'm talking about rather than listening enough to other people. So It's like, don't tell me to listen to other people. If you have something specific you think I need to learn from them, just tell it to me, for fuck's sake. If you can't do that, then what you're really saying is you're going about being you wrong, Eric. You need to be me instead. You need to be somebody who listens to philosophers and learns from them, not be a philosopher yourself. And if you are a philosopher yourself, well, you better not claim to be correct more than other people who are more famous than you, because that's just a sign of your delusion. Well, of course, if there were any substance to what he was saying, he would refer to specific things that I've said and explain either what's wrong with them or what else I could learn about it or something. What's clear in that comment about Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris thing of his is he doesn't like the fact that I'm making the bold claim that I'm way more correct, way more worth listening to than Jordan Peterson. I respect Sam Harris a lot more than Jordan Peterson, but that's a correct claim. It's totally a correct claim. I can offer insights, wisdoms, and more or less unassailable conclusions about a whole variety of questions, including grand cosmological questions. And I can do so better than they can. I know this because I can evaluate all sets of arguments equally. I can't evaluate them any other way, in fact. The fact that it's coming out of my mouth, somebody else's, once it's out of my mouth, it's just an objective critique, like everybody else's. Why do I respect Harris more than Peterson? He's much more cautious with his words. Peterson's sloppy. Like, Peterson's of the general mindset, from my perspective, that if he successfully conveys the truth he understands, it doesn't really matter whether the steps he took to get there were legitimate. I don't like that. That's weak, deceptive TE bullshit. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes I feel like, even though my verbal reasoning ability has been tested for in the top 1.5% of the population, and I'm still not intelligent enough, I need to be in the top 0.001% to be satisfied. I mean, I don't give a fuck about where any of my abilities test, right? There's only one test that matters: being correct or not. You can be the greatest genius in the world. If you're wrong, I will utterly dismantle you and leave you gasping for explanations or dignity, you know? I don't give a fuck how smart you are. Smart doesn't matter. Right does. Could I link the... Oh, it's a different email. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I can do that. Copy. Let me... How do I add a guest? No, I didn't want to do that. Ball. There. Now I figured it out. Copy. Again, since I fucked up and put something different on my clipboard. There. Now it is sent. Okay. I'm more interested in how they've been friends for that long when their values don't align. Our values align fine when Corey's not expressing his damage. The problem I'm having ultimately here is he's not currently validating against my fifth slot function, NI. He's using his intuition to know things that aren't true and then tell them to me, and I guess expect me to understand that I should listen to his intuition about things that intuition's not for. Obviously, I can't use deliberation to determine which song is better. Just like you can't use intuition to determine whether an argumentation or presentation withstands scrutiny. You use a browser extension that saves all your clipboard history. Very useful. That does sound very useful, Rubinar. So the thing is, Corey and I used to get along fine because we were in the same place. You know, it's like when I was married to Candace, I was a drunk. And accordingly was having a lot of distress. He was experiencing a lot of distress because he was in this horrible relationship. And we were both self-soothing and having a blast doing a bunch of speed. But it was when I quit drinking that the rift began initially between us. It's not something, at least somewhat my fault, because I misdiagnosed the problem with Liz as linking to her drinking. She does drink too much, but that's not why she's toxic. I tried to advocate that she should quit drinking, and that didn't go over well, obviously. That's a mistake I would never make now. I don't tell other people what to do with their drugs and alcohol. But I think Corey feels that if we're going to be equals, he needs to take me down a few notches. And instead of understanding my happiness and increasing comfort with myself for what it is, he sees it as falsely affirming something about me that shouldn't be affirmed. Have I considered a diss track? No, I don't want to be at war with Corey. In this most recent thing, it was really my fault, because what happened was he sent us this thing to listen, some guy he wanted us to check out to listen to. And after some reflection, I think what happened there is I felt anxiety that I wasn't going to like it and that it was going to create conflict between the two of us. And counterintuitively, I sort of tried to prevent him from expecting me to like it by having some sort of preemptive negative warnings that weren't critiques of the thing itself exactly, although I did say one thing about it. Well, in my initial impression, I'm not hearing a lot of songwriting, but I got to listen to it more, right? But instead, of course, that gets perceived by him, understandably, as I'm negatively judging the thing before I've listened to it. And I was just because I'm bipolar. It took me a while to figure out that that's probably what was going on there on my end. Also, it's like when he sends me that stuff to listen to, I think, okay, well, when Corey and I, when Corey when Corey wanted me to read that Ted Kaczynski thing, that led to a big fight. And so even though music is less likely to lead to that kind of thing, um, it still might because I don't know. So anyway,
I think it's tough too um with music because he probably doesn't have like many people to talk about it with. Just exactly what you're saying. He probably showed it to Liz and Liz didn't like it or whatever. So he you and he shared commonalities when it came to music at some point.
yeah, but now I see his engagement with music as linking too much to his ego. I don't trust his intuition anymore regarding this, you know? Well, Corey's doing a better job than that, Ruben. I'm not going to deny him his legitimate um, due. He's not just sending me links of things to watch at all. He wrote me a block of text. I wish I could access it on the phone while still live streaming, but I can't. Otherwise, I just read it out loud. Does he want to rival you? If so, you shouldn't take it that seriously. I don't know if he sees me as a rival. I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to outdo him in his specialties, but he doesn't. He's got a broad. He's got a very broad notion about the manner of things that his intuition makes him the world's foremost expert on, including things that intuition cannot resolve, things that require parsing. Both your and his hangups are ego related. Well, I mean, mine are ego related in the sense that um, I have a long history of putting a lot of faith in Corey's intuition and trusting him a lot, you know? So it's like I remember the first time, I remember very clearly when I realized, oh, I can't trust his intuition about this thing. Something else is going on. Was when I started YouTubing first, I was pretty excited about it and whatever. And he tried to indicate to me in no uncertain terms that I shouldn't do this. It was a bad platform for me. I'm never going to get any viewers because, it's like if I think my personality is going to be enough to get people to watch me or something, I'm fooling myself, etc. Of course, the thing is, none of those things are relevant at all. I I loved what I was doing legitimately, and he didn't like it, and he used his intuition to tell me not that he didn't like it, but that there was something wrong with me doing it, and that I was doomed to fail. Yeah, I very frequently position myself as an authority on what's good and right in general, right? Because he's my best friend. Okay? It's like Corey and I have a lot of history. And when things are not going bad between us, I never have more fun than when I'm hanging out with Corey and Rachel. Would be just, it's just like, that's the maximum fun I could possibly have. Doing drugs with Corey and Rachel. When Corey's and I are not at odds, okay? I had not that long ago the experience of this. But I'm also subject to being triggered by Jeff Shaw shit, which I associate with haters and idiots. Not my best friend, you know? I've known the guy since I was like 18 years old. And, you know, we were two intuitives in a world of sensors, but we did not know this, you know, but it's like, oh my God, somebody else who actually seems to understand things on more than a surface level or care about meanings, care about art in a way that seeks transcendence, not just, you know, a chance to play at a club and try to bang some groupie or whatever. So the thing is, I get what everyone's saying, but I also want to stress this. If you were him, you wouldn't want me to abandon you. Oh, Tyreek Hill got hurt? Aristotle would consider that an activity partner rather than a friend. I mean, isn't it the case, ultimately, that most of the best friends you can have in life are people you can do drugs with? My friend Dave Porter, he's one of my best friends for sure. And we can't do drugs together because he's completely sober. Although he did inform me that he had attempted microdosing mushrooms. In other words, completely sober. Right. So, yeah, I mean, to some extent, my ego's in play here. But the difference is I'm not insecure. Friends are people you learn from and they don't try to drag you down. Well, I mean, I don't necessarily need to learn from friends. I just, in fact, that's one of the problems with this thing is that Corey keeps seeming to think that me and Rachel need to learn something from him. That's what an insecure person would say. Well, I mean, the thing is, I have my insecurities like anybody, but I can I can review the data and note that I'm a lot less insecure than I once was. And I can note the data and I can note that Corey seems more insecure than he once was. So, I don't know. Sure, and I'm always willing to learn something from people. What I'm saying is that I'm not, when I'm looking for a friend, I'm not looking for a teacher. I may be guilty of, from Corey's perspective, trying to teach him things. But the only thing is, I like to explain things. When it seems to me that there's some words have been said, conveying to me that some parties are sharing a misunderstanding, and I have words that can clear everything up, I'm going to say them. People might think I'm correcting them. I think I'm just explaining. Corey might think I'm trying to teach him. Well, I mean, I'm explaining. Because there's obviously a lack of understanding about something here that I understand. So I'm going to explain it. You might not want to hear my explanation. Sometimes I don't explain. Sometimes I just, okay, well, they're just saying this thing. But the point is, my nature is as an explainer. So naturally, I'm not looking for a teacher and a friend. I'm not sure if anybody's looking for a teacher and a friend, really, but if they're going to be friends with me, they're going to learn more from me than I am from them, even though I'm a better learner than they are. Like, I learned so much from Corey because I'm good at learning things from other people. I'm not worried about having to be the person who knows everything already. But I also, because part of being good at learning things from other people is recognizing when you've learned all there is to learn in a given unit, you know? I don't expect that I have infinite things to teach to infinite people. I recognize that after people have heard what I have to say, and while I continually evolve my thinking with certain new elements here and there and have new things to say, the bulk of what I'm saying is a succession of restatements of things I've explained before. Once somebody understands it, it makes perfect sense to me that they're no longer going to want to listen to me explain it. Obviously, the only reason anybody would want to listen to me explain it in the first place, from my perspective, is so that they could go from a state of not understanding something to a state of understanding something. People like Corey wants to put onto me this idea that I'm somehow unwilling to learn. It's just that I'm so good and natural at learning all the time that it doesn't look like I'm learning, right? But obviously, periodic, like every day, I look at Google News, I read various articles, I read something in Quanta, I read this or that or the other thing or whatever. I read a lot of articles about um like like theoretical stuff, math conjectures or whatever. I also read a lot of stuff about sports. Periodically, I'll read part of an editorial about something before I just go, "Oh my fucking god!" Invariably, and the point is, I learn from every single thing I encounter, if it has anything to teach me. But because I've been doing that for such a long time, there are not a lot of things or people that have much to teach me anymore. Unlike most people, I didn't enter this whole adulthood thing with a built-in deep resistance to learning from other people. Right? Part of being an expert in intuition, Dom, is your relationship with ideas in the world. I remember ideas. I do not remember authors, where I got it from. I mix and match various ideas from various places because they fit together naturally, if they do. I don't care about this came from that guy, that came from this guy, whatever. Who the fuck cares, right? I'm trying to get things right. I'm not trying to assign a status of, no, that guy is a genius to some guy, right? And that's my claim in the world too, is I'm not claiming I'm some genius. Those people are weak as fuck. I'm right. That's much, much tougher, more important, and better than being smart. Corey seems to think the problem here is I think I'm smarter than these people. No. The problem is I'm right, and people like you keep evaluating what I'm saying by presuming to psychoanalyze me as though all of the answers weren't in my words. Which, of course, they are. I like to burn the little strings on the shorts. These shorts, they get strings on them, as you can see. You see these strings here? Well, what's the best way to get rid of these strings? Pow. Just like that. You just burn your little strings away, and then you go like that, so that your whole pants don't catch on fire. I'm not trying to tell Corey any truth, right? I'm annoyed by the fact that he's trying to tell me things that are not true and presenting them as though they are. Carlos, you don't buy these. Nobody buys these. You have to cut off the bottom part of the jeans because the reason these are cut off is they had such a big hole in the knee that it kept like catching my leg, and annoying me. So I had to just chop off the legs of these pants and make them into shorts. I didn't want to throw them away because they fit pretty well around the waist, and that's rare enough. Even pants that fit around the waist, even when I'm wearing a belt, somehow manage to fall down. I do not know what is wrong with my hips or whatever. I'm hip unknowingly. These cut-off jeans, I'm pretty sure cut-off jeans are not hip. But maybe these ones, because they do have these, like, I'm not going to try to burn this part. See how this is like all strings? Well, obviously, I just need to try to preserve that as long as possible, because otherwise, then I get a hole here, and before I know it, I'll have like one of those dresses that's got a slit up the side that you can see the side of your leg. Ass day. Is today ass day? It goes deep, deep in my subconscious. These are hip in a trailer park. Okay, well, next time I'm in a trailer park wearing these, I'll say, hey, everybody, check out these. Hopefully I'll win a prize for hippest guy of the day. I know someone who bases their positions on people they trust. Fine, W-E. But when I challenge a specific argument, they say, well, I'm not an expert, so I can't know. So I'm like, yeah, that's super annoying. Look, Ruben, I can't explain. You just need to watch Herbert Garciston's video on the subject, because he really explains it beautifully. Okay, if he explained it so beautifully, then that means you must understand it well enough to explain it to me. if you don't understand it well enough to explain it to me, then you did not understand his explanation in any meaningful way. The point to say, Ruben, is this. You claim this guy said these great things that are true. The only reason you could possibly have to make that claim is because you understand the things that he says, and it's impacted, that understanding has impacted you in some way that you want to share with me, right? Understanding is defined as, we're defining it from this point forward as the ability to explain back to you what you explained. So the thing is, the point is this. If he can't explain the argument he's excited about, he never understood it in the first place and has no reason to have any excitement or positive feelings towards it. It's just like evolution. People say they believe in evolution, but they cannot explain to me what it is. And not in any meaningful way, right? They'll say, well, it's evolution. It's, species change over time due to pressures. What's the mechanism? Is it genetic? And then there's a lot of, there's a lot of, explain it to me. I'm not trying to not understand it. If you can explain it to me so I can understand it, I'll switch sides and affirm it. And it's like, there are certain kinds of like super advanced physics stuff maybe where I wouldn't be able to understand it because it's too complicated, but it does make sense. Or math things like, here's the proof of Meow-Meow's conjecture. I can't understand that proof. I don't doubt that it makes perfectly good sense because I don't speak those symbolic languages. But I'm not asking for you to explain why your math proof of evolution is correct. Math keeps falsifying it. I'm asking you to explain what is the mechanism by which this change over time within a genome occurs. And nobody has yet been able to explain it to me in a way that I understand and makes sense. Since I can indisputably be called somebody who is at least capable of understanding, intellectualist stuff, and somebody who's dedicated to understanding things, who likes explanations, who wants an explanation, and who wants that explanation to be satisfying, then surely if evolution were true, some smart person could explain it to me so I could understand it. All right, well, if you're caught up in a bunch of nonsense, like let's say you're caught up in boogeymaning the left, well, then you just don't get it. You're not looking big picture enough, Ruben. In other words, you're not agreeing with my entirely meaningless and misleading metaphor. And I don't like that. If he can't explain it, he doesn't understand it. That's simple. Undercity in this Jets game, says that boy Klaus. Well, I don't expect the Jets to score many points. The other team in the game is Miami, though, right? What's the over? What's the over-under? Thank you for simplifying my unnecessarily long sentences, Carlos Paiva. If he can't explain it, he doesn't understand it. Exactly. My mother always used to say, you don't really learn something until you have to teach it. She was an ISFJ, so she was obviously projecting her frame of reference there a bit. But the point is, when when you know when you have to explain something to a class, you really have to understand it because um, if you care, if you want them to learn, they're going to ask questions. They're going to ask sometimes hard questions. You better understand it. You know, it's like I've been caught a few times where, like, I remember this one time in logic class, there was this proof that I took from a book that wasn't of my own creation. And I gave it to put it on a test for the students. I thought I had figured it out. It didn't have the answers in the book. It had the odds. Anyway, and then after the test, I realized that I had made a mistake, and when I thought I had figured it out, nobody could get it right, and then I couldn't get it right either. So that was embarrassing. That was embarrassing. The under the 40.5. Tyreek dropped a fourth down. Oh, they're playing now. It's Friday. Oh, that's right. It's crazy weekend.
It's crazy weekend?
Yeah. So it means you basically have weekend Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's why they're playing football today.
Oh, they're playing football today?
Even though it's Friday. They got a Black Friday game now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna end this live stream, and the reason is because I have a scheduled video conference with Isaiah at 1 o'clock, and then Rachel and I are going to Merced to purchase some vaporizing medical devices because Rachel and I both need medical marijuana. We have a disorder, and only marijuana will solve it. Peace to you as well, and namaste, another majestic INFJ. It's very nice to see you here. I like you. I like your channel. I subscribe to it. I respect your work. You say nice things about me. Goodbye, everybody. I love you.